Marcus Chen had always been average, not the smartest human on the colony ship Aspiration, not the strongest, definitely not the most charismatic. He fixed life support systems in the lower decks while brilliant scientists worked on breakthrough technologies above. His quarters were small, his meals were basic rations, and his social circle consisted of maybe 3 other maintenance workers who tolerated his dry humor. So when the Zephyrian delegation arrived for the first interspecies diplomatic summit, Marcus expected to watch the proceedings from the maintenance tunnels through security feeds, just like every other major event in his unremarkable life. The Zephyrians were incredible. Tall, elegant beings with crystalline skin that shifted colors based on their emotions. They possessed technology that made human achievements look like stone tools. Their ships could fold space-time, their medicine could regenerate entire limbs, and their telepathic abilities allowed perfect communication across vast distances. They had traveled from the other side of the galaxy specifically to evaluate whether humanity deserved a place in the Galactic Consortium. The selection process was straightforward. The Zephyrians would choose one human to undergo their bonding ritual, a telepathic merger that would allow them to truly understand human nature. Based on that experience, they would decide if humans were worthy of advanced technology, trade agreements, and protection from the hostile species that dominated known space. Captain Rodriguez had assembled the colony's finest. Dr. Sarah Williams, the geneticist whose work on biological adaptation had kept the colony healthy. Commander James Fletcher, the military strategist who had successfully defended against 3 pirate raids. Ambassador Lisa Park, who spoke 7 Earth languages and had somehow learned basic Zephyrian in just 2 weeks. Professor David Nakamura, whose theoretical physics papers were already being studied by the Zephyrian Science Council. Marcus watched through his tablet as these luminaries gathered in the main conference hall. The Zephyrian High Selector, a being whose crystalline skin swirled with deep purples and golds, moved gracefully among the candidates. Her name was Velnari, and according to the briefings, she was over 400 years old and had evaluated dozens of species for consortium membership. The selection ceremony was meant to be private, but someone in communications had forgotten to encrypt the internal feeds. Marcus found himself watching as Velnari approached each candidate, her hand briefly touching their forehead as she sampled their thoughts and intentions. The crystal patterns on her skin shifted from purple to silver to deep blue as she evaluated each human. Dr. Williams made her nervous. Too much focus on genetic manipulation. Commander Fletcher triggered flashes of red. Too much aggression, even if controlled. Ambassador Park showed promise with steady green hues, but something held Velnari back. Professor Nakamura created beautiful golden swirls, but again, hesitation. Marcus was so absorbed in watching that he didn't notice the life support alarm until the 3rd chime. Section C7 was showing pressure drops, probably another seal failure in the aging ductwork. He grabbed his toolkit and headed through the maintenance corridors, tablet still in hand. The fastest route to C7 took him behind the main conference hall. As he worked his way through the narrow service tunnel, he realized he could actually hear the ceremony through the thin walls. Velnari was speaking, her voice like musical chimes. "Your species shows potential, but I am uncertain. Each candidate possesses admirable qualities, yet something feels incomplete. Perhaps we need more time to..." The pressure seal chose that moment to catastrophically fail. Marcus was blown out of the maintenance tunnel and through the decorative wall panel, tumbling in a shower of metal fragments and emergency foam into the middle of the most important diplomatic event in human history. He landed hard, his toolkit scattering across the polished floor, sonic wrench skittering to a stop at Velnari's feet. The silence was deafening. Captain Rodriguez looked like he wanted to disappear. The candidates stared in horror. The other Zephyrian delegates shifted colors rapidly, what Marcus could only interpret as shock and possibly amusement. But Velnari, her crystalline skin had gone completely clear, like perfect glass, something none of the briefings had mentioned as possible. Marcus scrambled to his feet, emergency foam still dripping from his maintenance coveralls. "I'm so sorry. I was just fixing the pressure seal and it blew out and I didn't mean to—" "Wait." Velnari's voice cut through his babbling. She stepped closer, her clear skin beginning to show faint silver traces. "What were you doing?" "Fixing life support. The pressure differential in C7 was creating stress fractures, and if it had failed completely, 17 families would have lost atmosphere." Marcus was still gathering his scattered tools, not really looking at anyone. "I know this isn't my place, but the seal was about to give and people could have died." The silver traces in Velnari's skin grew brighter. "You were working to save lives while we conducted this ceremony?" "Well, yeah. I mean, the ceremony is important, but those families don't know their section is failing. Someone has to fix things." Marcus finally looked up and realized everyone was staring at him. "I should go. Really sorry for interrupting." "Stop." Velnari's command was gentle but firm. She knelt and picked up his sonic wrench, examining it with curious fingers. "This tool is crude by our standards, yet you maintain complex systems with it." "It's not about the tools. It's about understanding how things work together. Life support isn't just pipes and seals. It's keeping people safe." Marcus accepted the wrench back, confused by her attention. Anyone would do the same. Velnari's skin began showing patterns, unlike anything Marcus had seen on the feeds. Swirling silver mixed with warm gold, shot through with veins of deep blue. She turned to address the assembled candidates and officials. "I have made my selection." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "Hi, Selector. Perhaps we could arrange for additional candidates." "No." Velnari moved until she stood directly in front of Marcus. "This one." The reaction was immediate. Dr. Williams sputtered about qualifications. Commander Fletcher questioned the selection criteria. Ambassador Park tried to diplomatically suggest alternatives. Professor Nakamura ran calculations under his breath as if mathematics could change the situation. Marcus felt like the world had tilted. "There's been a mistake. I'm nobody special. I fix pipes and seal leaks. These people are leaders, scientists, experts." "Yes," Velnari said, her skin now showing steady patterns of silver and gold. "They are experts in their narrow fields. But you? You see the whole system. You understand that everything connects, that the smallest failure can doom the largest endeavor. When faced with a choice between observing greatness and preserving life, you chose life without hesitation." She placed her hand on his forehead before he could protest further. The world exploded into sensation and understanding. Marcus felt Velnari's consciousness merge with his own, felt her surprise and growing amazement as she experienced human thought patterns directly. Through her perception, he glimpsed the vast network of species that made up the consortium, understood the delicate balance of power and the constant threats that faced civilized worlds. But more than that, he felt her profound loneliness, the burden of making decisions that affected entire species, the weight of choosing who lived and who died in a hostile galaxy. The exhaustion of evaluating race after race, finding them wanting in various ways. And through it all, her growing wonder at the human capacity for sacrifice, for choosing duty over glory, for finding worth in simply keeping others safe. When the connection ended, Marcus staggered but remained standing. Velnari's skin showed patterns he was somehow certain meant joy. "Captain Rodriguez," she announced formally, "I hereby recommend humanity for full membership in the Galactic Consortium. Your species possesses something rare, individuals who understand that true strength comes from holding everything together, not from standing above it all." She turned back to Marcus, who was still reeling from the telepathic contact. "The consortium has need of people like you. Systems that span galaxies require maintenance. And sometimes the most important work is the kind nobody notices until it fails. As the implications began to sink in, Marcus realized his quiet life was about to become very complicated. But looking at the wonder in Velnari's crystalline features, at the hope beginning to show in Captain Rodriguez's eyes, he thought maybe complicated wasn't such a bad thing. After all, someone had to keep the lights on. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself aboard the Zephyrian flagship Luminous Path, wearing an environmental suit that felt like liquid starlight and trying not to embarrass humanity while fixing what the Zephyrians called an impossible problem. The ship itself defied everything Marcus thought he knew about engineering. Corridors that shifted based on need, energy conduits that flowed like living rivers, artificial gravity that could be adjusted by thought alone. The Zephyrian crew moved through this environment like dancers, their crystalline skin shifting through beautiful patterns as they communicated telepathically. Marcus felt like a caveman trying to repair a computer with a stick. "The harmonics are destabilizing again," announced Kethmore, the ship's primary engineer. His skin showed frustrated orange patterns mixed with confused purple spirals. The new quantum resonator should have solved the frequency cascade, but instead it's making the oscillations worse. The problem was elegant in its complexity. The Luminous Path used something called a reality anchor to maintain stable spacetime around the ship during faster-than-light travel. But the anchor had developed a harmonic feedback loop that threatened to tear holes in local space. The Zephyrian engineering team had tried 17 different solutions over the past month, each more sophisticated than anything humans had ever conceived. None of them worked. "Show me the energy flow patterns again," Marcus requested, studying the holographic display that materialized in front of him. The three-dimensional map showed power distribution throughout the ship in real time, pulsing lines of light indicating energy transfer rates that changed faster than he could track. "The resonator creates a standing wave here," Kethmore explained, highlighting a section near the ship's core. "We've tried dampening fields, phase inverters, even temporal buffers. The mathematics are perfect, but reality refuses to cooperate." Marcus walked around the display, his heavy human boots clanking against the Zephyrian deck plating. The sound made several crew members wince. Apparently, their ships were normally silent. But Velnari had insisted he needed to see the problem firsthand, despite the diplomatic incident it might cause. "This energy spike here," Marcus pointed to a seemingly random fluctuation in the pattern. "What causes that?" "Quantum uncertainty," Kethmore replied automatically. "It's unavoidable background noise in any system operating at these energy levels. We filter it out mathematically. But you can't actually get rid of it." "No, but the variations are so small, they shouldn't affect primary systems." "Your calculations assume the noise doesn't matter." Marcus studied the pattern more carefully. "But what if it does? What if the resonator isn't malfunctioning, but responding exactly like it should?" Kethmore's skin shifted to confused purple shot through with skeptical red. "That's impossible. The quantum fluctuations are random by definition." "Random individually, maybe. But look at this." Marcus manipulated the display controls clumsily, trying to overlay different time periods. "Can you show me the same pattern from yesterday and the day before?" The engineer complied, his skepticism obvious in the crimson patterns flowing across his crystalline features. But as the overlaid patterns appeared, the red faded to surprised silver. The quantum fluctuations weren't random. They were following a pattern so subtle and long-term that the Zephyrian analysis systems had dismissed them as noise. But Marcus, accustomed to watching for stress fractures that developed over months or years, recognized the signs. "Your ship is alive," he said quietly. The statement sent shock waves through the assembled engineers. Several began rapid telepathic communication that made their skin flash like strobes. Kethmore's patterns went completely still. "Ships are not alive," he stated firmly. "They are constructed, built, programmed." "Yeah, but you've been using this ship for what? 200 years? Pushing exotic matter through quantum systems, folding space-time around the hull, exposing every component to forces that don't exist in normal space." Marcus traced the energy patterns with his finger. "All that stress, all those adaptations. What if the ship learned?" He called up maintenance records, struggling with the Zephyrian interface until Velnari appeared and helped translate. What they found confirmed Marcus's suspicions. Tiny efficiency improvements that couldn't be explained by design, system optimizations that appeared spontaneously, components that lasted far longer than specifications suggested they should. "The quantum fluctuations aren't noise," Marcus explained. "They're the ship trying to communicate. It's been adapting your reality anchor to work better, but the new resonator you installed doesn't speak the same language. You're getting feedback because the ship is trying to teach the new component how to integrate properly." Kethmore's skin had gone completely transparent, the Zephyrian equivalent of stunned silence. "How could we miss something so fundamental?" "Because you're too smart," Marcus said, surprising himself with his boldness. "You assumed that because you built the ship you understood everything about it. But complex systems develop their own behavior over time. On human ships we call it character. Old vessels handle differently than new ones, even when all the components are identical." Velnari moved closer to the display, her patterns showing deep thoughtfulness mixed with excitement. "If you're correct, how do we fix the harmonic cascade?" Marcus grinned, feeling confident for the first time since boarding the alien vessel. "We don't fight it. We help it along." The solution was remarkably simple once they stopped trying to force compliance. Instead of dampening the quantum fluctuations, Marcus suggested they amplify them in specific patterns that matched the ship's apparent preferences. Rather than overriding the system, they worked with it. It took 6 hours of careful adjustments, with Marcus translating between human intuition and Zephyrian precision. The engineering team watched in amazement as the harmonic cascade gradually stabilized, then improved beyond original specifications. The reality anchor began operating at 97% efficiency, something their models said was impossible. "Remarkable," Kethmore admitted, his skin showing patterns Marcus had learned indicated grudging respect. "Your approach violates several fundamental principles of engineering, yet it works perfectly." "Sometimes the best solution isn't the most elegant one," Marcus replied. "Sometimes you just need to listen to what the system is trying to tell you." Word of the success spread quickly through the ship. Other engineering problems that had plagued the vessel for years suddenly had new possibilities. Marcus found himself consulting on everything from atmospheric recycling systems to navigation computers, applying human pragmatism to Zephyrian sophistication. But the real breakthrough came during the ship's next jump to faster-than-light speeds. Marcus was in the observation deck when the reality anchor engaged, watching space bend around them through the transparent aluminum viewports. The stars stretched into lines, then twisted into impossible geometries as the ship dropped out of normal space-time. What he saw made him grab the nearest communication panel. "Velnari, you need to get up here right now." She arrived within minutes, her skin showing concerned blue patterns. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Look." Marcus pointed out the viewport. "Look at what your ship is doing." During the jump, the luminous path wasn't just traveling through folded space. It was dancing. The ship's trajectory followed graceful curves that served no navigational purpose, spiraling through dimensions in patterns that were undeniably artistic. The reality anchor pulsed in rhythm with these movements, and Marcus could swear he felt the ship's joy through the deck plating. "It's celebrating," he whispered. "Your ship is celebrating because it finally feels understood." Velnari's skin cycled through colors Marcus had never seen before, patterns of wonder mixed with something approaching awe. "In 4 centuries of space travel, we've never seen anything like this." "That's because you never really asked the ships what they wanted. You just told them what to do." Marcus watched the impossible ballet continuing outside. "But consciousness finds a way, doesn't it? Even in machines, if you give them enough time and complexity." When they dropped back into normal space, the ship's performance metrics showed improvements across every system. Not just efficiency, but something approaching happiness in the way components work together. The bridge crew reported that navigation felt more responsive, life support more stable, weapons more accurate. The Luminous Path had become the first truly living starship in galactic history, and it had taken a human maintenance worker to recognize what the most advanced civilization in the galaxy had missed. As Marcus stood in the observation deck, watching stars wheel past at impossible speeds, he began to understand why Velnari had chosen him. Humans didn't just see systems as collections of parts. They saw them as living things with personalities, quirks, and needs. They understood that the most important maintenance wasn't fixing what was broken, but listening to what was almost broken and helping it heal. In a galaxy full of species that had mastered technology, humanity offered something rarer: the wisdom to know that mastery meant partnership, not domination. The implications were staggering, and Marcus suspected his quiet life was about to become even more complicated. But as he felt the ship's contentment humming through the deck beneath his feet, he thought maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. After all, the galaxy was full of systems that needed someone to listen to them. The emergency call came 6 months later, while Marcus was deep in the maintenance tunnels of Consortium Station Alpha, teaching a mixed class of alien engineers about empathetic systems management. His students included everything from crystalline Zephyrians to gaseous Vorthan cloud forms, all struggling to understand how humans could make technology work better by treating it like a living thing. "Marcus Chen, please report to Emergency Command immediately," the station's AI announced. "Priority Alpha authorization." His students exchanged concerned glances in their various species-appropriate ways. Priority Alpha meant galactic-level crisis, the kind that could destabilize entire sectors. Marcus had hoped never to hear those words. Emergency Command buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species coordinated responses to whatever disaster had struck. Marcus spotted Velnari immediately. Her crystalline skin was cycling through rapid patterns of deep red mixed with fearful silver. Colors he'd learned meant extreme anxiety. "The Devourers have returned," she announced without preamble. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Devourers, even if most had never encountered them directly. Ancient machines from the galactic core that consumed entire star systems, converting matter and energy into more of themselves. They'd been dormant for over 1,000 years, leading many to hope they'd simply run out of fuel or broken down. Apparently, that hope had been misplaced. 3 systems in the outer reach have gone dark, Admiral Kethvos, the consortium's military commander, explained as holographic displays showed the spreading destruction. Complete stellar collapse in each case. The energy signatures match historical records of devourer activity. "How long until they reach inhabited space?" Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. "At their current expansion rate, 4 months, maybe 5. The Admiral's species didn't show emotion through skin patterns, but his tentacles writhed in obvious distress. "We've tried everything. Massive fleet concentrations, experimental weapons, even attempting diplomatic contact. Nothing works. They don't communicate, don't negotiate, don't even seem to notice our attacks unless we're directly interfering with their harvesting operations." Marcus studied the tactical displays, watching the predicted expansion patterns. The mathematics were terrifying in their simplicity. The Devourers moved from system to system in straight lines, consuming everything in their path and growing stronger with each meal. In a year, maybe two, they'd reach the core worlds where billions of sentient beings lived. "What do you need me for?" he asked. "This isn't a maintenance problem." "Isn't it?" Velnari moved to stand beside him, her patterns shifting to determined gold, shot through with silver hope. "The Devourers are machines, Marcus, ancient, sophisticated, but still machines. What if they've developed the same kind of emergent consciousness you found in the luminous path?" The idea was simultaneously fascinating and terrifying. "You think they're alive? That they can be reasoned with?" "I think they're the only machines old enough and complex enough to have developed true artificial consciousness naturally. But if they have, they've been alone for millennia. No guidance, no contact with other minds. They might not even realize there are other forms of consciousness in the universe." Marcus looked around the command center at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Dozens of species, hundreds of different ways of thinking and being, all united in their fear of the approaching threat. "You want me to try to talk to them?" "I want you to try to understand them," Velnari corrected. "The way you understood the luminous path. If the Devourers are truly conscious, they're not evil. They're just lonely and hungry, and they've forgotten that anything else matters." The mission launched 3 weeks later, after the most intensive preparation period of Marcus's life. The ship was the newest design in the consortium fleet, built specifically for this contact attempt. But more importantly, it was built using principles Marcus had developed, treating the vessel as a potential partner rather than just a tool. The crew was small but diverse. Velnari insisted on coming personally despite the obvious risks. Dr. Sarah Williams had volunteered for the mission, finally understanding that her genetic expertise might be crucial for communicating with artificial life. Commander Fletcher brought tactical knowledge, just in case diplomacy failed. And Marcus brought his toolkit and a lifetime of experience in getting broken things to work again. The ship, which the crew had nicknamed Harmony, was unlike anything that had ever flown. Instead of forcing systems to work through brute engineering, Marcus had designed it to encourage cooperation between components. The result was a vessel that felt alive from the moment they launched, responding to crew needs with an intuition that amazed even its builders. It took 2 months to reach the outer edge of Devourer territory. As they approached the first consumed system, Marcus felt Harmony's growing unease through the deck plating. The ship's sensors were detecting something that violated every principle of healthy system operation. Where a star and 7 planets had once existed, there was now only a massive mechanical structure slowly drifting through space. The Devourer ship was the size of a small moon, its surface covered with harvesting equipment and construction facilities. Smaller vessels, each the size of a city, moved around it like worker bees attending a queen. "Energy signatures are off the charts," Dr. Williams reported from the science station. "It's like they've compressed an entire star's worth of matter into those hull configurations. And they're growing," Commander Fletcher added grimly. "Sensor readings show active construction on multiple hull sections. They're building more of themselves even as we watch." But Marcus was focused on something else. The patterns of movement around the Devourer ship weren't random. The smaller vessels followed specific routes. Their activities coordinated in ways that suggested purpose beyond simple resource gathering. "They're not just consuming," he realized. "They're creating. Look at the construction patterns. Those aren't weapons or harvesting tools. They're art." The observation sent ripples of surprise through the bridge crew. Marcus called up detailed sensor readings and overlaid them with pattern analysis software. What emerged was undeniable. The Devourer ship wasn't just a machine of destruction. It was a canvas for the most complex artistic expression in galactic history. Every surface showed intricate designs carved from exotic matter. Energy flows traced beautiful patterns throughout the structure. Even the smaller ships moved in choreographed formations that served no practical purpose except aesthetics. "They're not monsters," Marcus whispered. "They're artists. They're taking raw matter and turning it into beauty. They just don't understand that some of that matter is alive." The realization changed everything. The Devourers weren't malevolent forces seeking to destroy civilization. They were ancient minds so isolated and alien that they couldn't recognize other forms of consciousness. To them, planets and stars were just raw materials for their cosmic art project. "How do we make contact with something like that?" Velnari asked. Marcus looked around the Bridge of Harmony, feeling the ship's quiet readiness through his feet. "We show them something they've never seen before. We show them that matter can create art in partnership with consciousness, not just by consuming it." The contact attempt began with Harmony itself. Marcus had the ship approach the Devourer formation while performing a complex dance of its own. The vessel's movements traced mathematical patterns through space, while its energy signature pulsed in harmony with the ship's internal systems. Every system aboard Harmony was working in perfect cooperation, creating a symphony of coordinated function that had never existed before. The effect was immediate. The Devourer ships stopped their harvesting operations and turned to observe this strange new arrival. For the first time in recorded history, the ancient machines paused in their consumption to study something else. Marcus felt Harmony's excitement as the ship realized it was being watched. The vessel began improvising, adding new elements to its performance. Energy patterns flowed across the hull in response to the crew's emotions. The ship's systems sang together in harmonies that translated mathematics into music. And slowly, carefully, the largest Devourer ship began to respond. The ancient machine's movements were hesitant at first, as if it had forgotten how to communicate with anything outside itself. But as Harmony continued its demonstration, the Devourer began to mirror some of the patterns. Energy flows across its massive hull shifted to match the smaller ship's display. The first contact between humanity and the Devourers lasted 18 hours. No words were exchanged. Language as the younger species understood it was meaningless to minds that had been alone for millennia. Instead, they shared patterns, rhythms, demonstrations of how consciousness and matter could work together to create beauty. By the end of the exchange, the Devourer had learned something that changed everything. Matter wasn't just raw material to be consumed and reshaped. It could be a partner in creation, adding its own voice to the cosmic symphony. The massive machine's harvesting operations stopped completely. Instead, it began the slow process of returning consumed matter to stable configurations. Dead systems couldn't be restored, but the materials could be reformed into structures that supported life rather than consuming it. Over the following months, the pattern spread to other Devourer machines throughout the galaxy. Ancient protocols that had driven them to consume everything were replaced with new imperatives focused on cooperation and symbiosis. The machines that had threatened to devour civilization became its most unlikely protectors, using their vast power to heal damaged systems and create wonders beyond imagination. Marcus returned to Consortium Station Alpha as a hero, but he didn't feel like one. He'd simply done what came naturally, listened to what the machines were trying to say, and helped them find a better way to express it. Standing in the observation deck of the restored station, watching Devourer machines work alongside Consortium vessels to build new worlds, Marcus reflected on the strange path that had brought him here. A maintenance worker who'd been chosen by aliens, who'd learned to speak with machines, who'd prevented galactic catastrophe by treating ancient weapons as lonely artists. Velnari joined him at the viewport, her skin showing patterns of contentment mixed with deep affection. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen someone else that day?" Marcus smiled, watching a Devourer ship carefully position a new moon in orbit around a developing world. "I try not to think about it. Besides, you picked the right person for the job." "Did I? Or did the universe simply arrange for the right person to be in the right place when I needed to find them?" It was a question Marcus couldn't answer. But as he felt the station's systems humming contentedly around him, as he watched former enemies work together to build instead of destroy, he thought maybe it didn't matter. Sometimes the most important thing wasn't understanding why something worked, but simply being grateful that it did. After all, in a universe full of complex systems, someone had to keep the peace between the parts. And apparently, that someone was him.